Emmerdale Review. Ray in danger as a chilling cliffhanger engulfs Marlon. It was a week when Emmerdale promised tension and instead delivered outright chaos. Viewers were left gripping the edges of their sofas as the explosive Ray in danger storyline collided with Marlon's fragile emotional world, erupting into one of the show's most unsettling cliffhangers of the year. What unfolded across the village was a masterclass in suspense, weaving fear, suspicion, and emotional devastation in a way only Emmerdale can. At its center stood Ray, a man who arrived in the Dales claiming he wanted nothing more than a fresh start, only to find himself slowly suffocating beneath the weight of a past that refuses to stay buried. From the very beginning, the signs were there. Ray's carefully constructed calm began to fracture, scene by scene, as the invisible web around him tightened. That tension reached a breaking point behind the Woolpack, where his demeanor shifted dramatically. Once composed and guarded, Ray became visibly shaken after realizing someone had been watching him from the shadows. In that moment, fans were forced to ask the question that now looms over the storyline: has Ray's past finally followed him to Emmerdale, and has it brought lethal consequences with it? Already burdened by his own emotional turmoil, Marlon found himself unwillingly pulled into Ray's nightmare as their storylines collided in a cliffhanger that left viewers shouting at their screens. Marlon, who has spent months fighting to keep his life on track after heartbreak, conflict, and relentless pressure, had no idea that stepping outside the pub to clear his head would place him at the epicenter of one of the year's most shocking twists. The moment unfolded with excruciating precision. Marlon noticed Ray standing rigid, frozen in place, staring down at something the cameras refused to reveal. The suspense built inch by inch, stretching every second to its limit. Ray whispered words Marlon could barely understand, his voice trembling as if he had seen something that shattered the fragile sense of calm he had been clinging to since arriving in the village. Instinctively, Marlon moved closer. Always the emotional heart of Emmerdale, his concern overrode his fear. Unsure whether Ray was injured, threatened, or simply overwhelmed, Marlon stepped forward, only to stumble into the moment that would change everything. From behind the bins emerged an ominous figure. Slow, deliberate, menacing. The posture alone was enough to make Ray recoil in sheer terror. The camera cut to Marlon's horrified expression, seamlessly blending fear, confusion, and concern. This was not a threat he recognized, and that made it all the more dangerous. The figure's identity remains a mystery, but his presence vibrated with menace. Ray's panic escalated into something raw and deeply personal as he cried out Marlon's name, a sound that made it instantly clear this was no ordinary confrontation. This was a reckoning. The cliffhanger spiraled further when the stranger lunged forward, not with a weapon, but with words that froze Marlon to the spot. "You thought you could escape me, Ray. You thought Emmerdale would hide you." With that, Ray seemed to collapse in on himself. His body deflated, as though a darkness he had been running from had finally caught up with him. Marlon was left stranded between two instincts: the need to protect Ray, and the desperate urge to protect himself. After everything Marlon has endured this year, this threat risks dragging him into yet another traumatic saga, one capable of shaking the Woolpack, the Dingle family, and the entire village. Because danger never stays contained in Emmerdale, and Ray's secret is clearly large enough to attract someone capable of real harm, fan theories immediately exploded. Was Ray involved in criminal dealings before arriving in the village? Did he betray someone dangerous? Is this figure linked to an off-screen feud, or is this the beginning of a brand new storyline set to unravel over the coming weeks? Then there is Marlon, gentle, loyal Marlon, once again standing at the intersection of danger and heartbreak. Viewers already fear the emotional toll this storyline will take on him, especially after everything he has survived. His stroke, his fractured relationships, his painstaking attempts to rebuild confidence and stability. Just as he began to feel grounded again, trauma has found him once more. This time, not for his own sake, but for someone he barely knows, which raises even more questions. Why does Ray trust Marlon more than anyone else? What moment forged this unlikely bond, one that now places Marlon directly in harm's way? The writers carefully layered this episode with subtle clues. Ray's hesitation before entering the Woolpack. His distracted expression during conversations. The flicker of fear when someone mentioned the police earlier in the week. Moments that once seemed insignificant now crystallize into something far more ominous. It feels as though Ray may have been expecting this confrontation all along, or worse, waiting for it. Marlon's discovery marks the beginning of what feels like a major narrative arc, one that could shake Emmerdale's foundations. Speculation is already mounting that Ray may not survive the coming weeks if his past proves truly deadly. Meanwhile, Marlon could become a reluctant witness, an ally, or even a scapegoat, depending on how deeply this story digs into Ray's hidden life. Visually, the cliffhanger was electrifying. Tight close-ups of Ray's trembling hands, his shallow breaths, his darting eyes, contrasted sharply with Marlon's steady yet horrified composure. The low, pulsating hum of the score intensified as the figure cornered Ray against the cold stone wall of the pub. And despite his terror, Marlon instinctively stepped forward, as if ready to shield him, a moment that reaffirmed why he remains one of the show's moral anchors. When the figure delivered his final words, "You know what you owe me, Ray. And I'm here to collect," the episode shifted from thrilling to utterly chilling. The fallout promises to ripple far beyond Ray alone. Fans are already speculating whether familiar faces like Kane will intervene once danger threatens the Woolpack, whether Chaz will retaliate to protect her business, or whether Mandy will become Marlon's emotional lifeline as the pressure mounts. Others wonder if Ray's past connects to older village crimes, returning villains, or long-forgotten debts. What gives this cliffhanger its power is Ray's genuine terror, a vulnerability viewers have not seen since his arrival. This does not feel like a standard Emmerdale threat. It feels psychological, personal, targeted, and Marlon's role as witness ensures the storyline remains emotionally grounded as it escalates. The final shot, Marlon's wide-eyed, silent panic as danger loomed inches away, is already being hailed as one of the year's most haunting closing frames. A moment that captured fear, vulnerability, and moral conflict in a single breathless image. As fans rewatch the episode, earlier moments now take on darker meaning. Ray's flinches, his distracted stares, his reluctance to explain himself, and perhaps most telling of all, his failure to deny the accusation that he owed the stranger something. This was not a random enemy. This was someone deeply embedded in Ray's past. Now, as the truth begins to surface, the peace of the entire village hangs in the balance. Marlon, emotionally unprepared and dangerously exposed, stands at the heart of what comes next, torn between compassion and self-preservation. One thing is certain, Emmerdale has launched a major new arc. One steeped in danger, psychological tension, and emotional fallout. And this cliffhanger marks only the beginning of Ray's descent, with Marlon's fate now inextricably tied to his.